Memorial Day Proclamation. Whereas, while the nation was still recovering from the horrors of the Civil War, people in cities and towns across the country gathered to honor those Union and Confederate soldiers who had given their lives, celebrating the first Decoration Day. And whereas, after World War I, the nation came together again to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country. And whereas, renamed Memorial Day, the last Monday in May is when the people remember and honor the memory of all the men and women who fought and died in all American wars and conflicts. And whereas, throughout our country's history, thousands of Massachusetts citizens have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life. And whereas, the residents of Amherst have a long history of serving their country to defend American freedoms. And whereas this history includes nearly 30 Black soldiers enlisting on Amherst's behalf as members of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, the first all-Black Civil War regiment in Massachusetts. And whereas their legacy of patriotism and dedication to country is an inspiration to all Americans. And whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who gave their lives, so that their sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, we, the Amherst Town Council, hereby proclaim May 25th, 2020, to be Memorial Day and urge all residents of Amherst to recognize the sacrifice of past residents and observe this day in remembrance of them.
Greetings. As with so many other parts of our lives, we must celebrate Memorial Day virtually. This is for the health and safety of all of our citizens, and specifically our living veterans who join in celebrating this day. As a child, I remember it as Decoration Day, which originated in the years following the Civil War. The Civil War, ending in 1865, claimed more American lives than any conflict in U.S. history and required the establishment of the country's first national cemeteries. Thus, as Americans, we began gathering on Memorial Day, holding springtime tributes to those countless fallen soldiers, decorating their graves with flowers and reciting prayers. On the first National Decoration Day, General James Garfield made a speech at Arlington National Cemetery. 5,000 participants helped decorate the graves of 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers buried there. During World War I, the United States found itself embroiled again in major conflict, and the holiday was expanded to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars: World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Today, we find ourselves in the midst of a very different national and international conflict, the coronavirus. And once again, it has killed many of those who have served our country. The concentration of those deaths at the Holyoke Soldier Home is one of our community of Western Mass unfortunate examples of insufficient resources to support our veterans' medical needs. I conclude by thanking all living veterans for their service and remembering all who have passed away, whether directly in the service of our country or in the years following their service. We are grateful for the many freedoms we enjoy in the United States, gained and retained by those who have so valiantly served in the U.S. military. Thank you.
I'm Sandra McCarthy, past state president of the Ladies Auxiliary to Barbara Auxiliary. I joined the auxiliary in memory and honor of my father under his eligibility. He was a World War II veteran who received the Purple Heart and Bronze Star. And when he died in 2016, he said, please volunteer, get active again. So I have, and this is in honor of him and all the rest of the veterans.
Hello, I'm Carly Jane Dunn Watson. I'm a member of the VFW Auxiliary Department of Massachusetts. I do my service to veterans in honor of my father, Commander Theodore John Dunn Jr. And I know someone is taking care of his grave in Arlington Cemetery, and so I'm helping take care of the graves of other veterans here where I live in Amherst, Massachusetts. My father was a Mustang, came up from seaman to commander, and he gave me a great life. And I spend my retirement helping and honoring other veterans.
Good morning. My name is Rob McAllister. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. We're here at the South Amherst Cemetery, placing old flags with new flags to all our veterans here at the cemetery. It's our way of saying thank you and acknowledging their service.
Hi, I'm Brian Case.
So what brought you out here today, Brian?
I came out today to help with replacing the old American flags in grave sites around Amherst to commemorate the veterans in their memory, as well as for all the men and women who have served this country.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah, and I'm helping out here in Amherst doing flag swaps for Memorial Day, helping out the Amherst VFW. I guess I came down to help out because I consider myself a patriot, and I think this is the right thing to do, giving back and remembering those who gave the most for our country. And it's a beautiful day out, so it's a good reason to be outside, and I appreciate and want to give back to our veterans.
I'm Paul Bockelman, Town Manager of Amherst. Memorial Day is an important day for the country, for the town, and for my family. My mom was a nurse in the Navy during World War II. My dad served in the Army, was a disabled vet, and is a former prisoner of war. Their experiences and their service defined them, and in turn, their experiences and their service defined me and my 5 brothers and sisters. They're no longer with us, although I think about them every day, but no day more so than a Memorial Day. I thank everyone for paying attention to this day and for honoring those who've gone before us. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, straight as that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
General Order Number 11. Headquarters, Grand Army of the Republic, Washington, D.C., May 5th, 1868. 1. The 30th day of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in the defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, hamlet, churchyard in the land. In this observance, no formal ceremony is prescribed, but posts and comrades will, in their own way, arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances permit. We are organized, comrades, as our regulations tell us, for the purpose, among other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind and fraternal feelings which have bound together the soldiers, sailors, and marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more and to assure this result than by cherishing tenderly the memory of our heroic dead, who made their breasts a barricade between our country and its foes. Their soldiers' lives were the reveille of freedom to a race in chains, and their death a tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can and add to their adornment and security. It is but a fitting tribute to the memory of our slain defenders. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant path invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism, avarice, or neglect, nor ravages of time testify to the present or the coming generations that we have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull, and other hands slack, and others' hearts cold in the solemn trust, ours shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remains in us. Let us then at the appointed time gather around the sacred remains and garland the passionless mounds above them with the choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag they saved from dishonor. Let us, in solemn presence, renew our pledge to aid and assist those whom they have left among us as a sacred charge upon the nation's gratitude, the soldiers and sailors, widows and orphans. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate the observance with the hope that it will be kept up from year to year, while the survivor of the war remains to honor the memory of his departed comrades. He earnestly desires the public press call attention to this order and lend its friendly aid in bringing to the notice of comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. Department commanders will use every effort to make this order effective. By command, John A. Logan, Commander-in-Chief, N. Chipman, Adjutant General.
Flag retirement ceremonies, an Amherst tradition after replacing new flags on the cemeteries on Memorial Day weekend. Flag Day retirements take place when an American flag is deemed too marred and tattered to continue to fly. Never is it acceptable for an American flag to be thrown away, as this would be a sign of defeat for the message that it stands for. Instead, a flag retirement is deemed a more honorable option. The United States military does everything that it can to take care of its flags, out of deep-seated respect for the republic for which it stands. Sometimes, however, especially if it has been torn apart in a battle, it is simply unavoidable. When this happens, a flag retirement service is held, giving the flag its last honor. This flag retirement service usually begins with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a reading of the poem, I Am Old Glory, which recounts all the fateful moments and victories the American flag has witnessed. A moment of silence is usually next, as the crowd quietly considers the solemnity of the moment. This flag retirement service combines solemnity with the joy and pride of being an American. While participants in the ceremony cannot help but feel a little sad over the demise of a flag, they take comfort in the fact that its message and the nation that it represents will live on.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But, in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
So I'm just taking a few moments and asking various people, our leadership in the community, to maybe make some reflections on what Memorial Day means to you on this very unique year, and also in the past when either you were a child or memories that you have for Memorial Day for you.
Yeah, and I really just want to say how much I appreciate you, Steve, for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Just
you.
really appreciate you. So I was talking to my brother-in-law. He's Jay Hennessy. He served. You probably remember. He served for 20 plus years in the SEALs, and he ended his career at captain. And I was talking to him about Memorial Day just actually over the weekend before I got your text. And one of the things that Jay said to me, which I just really love, and I've seen this embodied by you, Steve, and certainly by the veterans who have been living and working in the region for, as long as I've been here and hundreds of years before, is that the women and men who have served our nation served it for a higher purpose, a common mission. They didn't care about political party or gender or sexual orientation or the color of folks' skin, or whether you came from a hard background or an easy background. They cared about the mission and caring for each other. And that's what Jay has always said. He said, that the service has been a great equalizer in so many ways. And so that led me to think, okay, so all of these people, the women and men who've served our nation, have served it for this higher ideal. And they themselves either lost their lives in service or have lost their lives since serving. So they did this kind of service for us. So what are we going to do for them? That's where I go immediately. How do we honor their service in the highest way? I see you doing that every day, Steve, from your Veteran Services Officer position. And I'm mindful of all of the ideas that you've brought to me in terms of what we can and should be doing for veterans. And clearly I'm fighting for those with you. And thanks to you, we're winning on some of them. And again, I want to say, Steve, thanks to you, that's happening because you are putting yourself forward and you are so well regarded. But then I think about the Holyoke Soldiers Home, for example, and the way in which we haven't served the women and men connected with the Holyoke Soldiers Home and the tragedy that's unfolding there, although it is somewhat arrested because of state focus. We're not finished yet. We have many miles to walk to ensure that the residents of the Holyoke Soldiers get care state that they deserve. And I know that you have been part of sounding the alarm about the Holyoke home again for far longer than us. And I want you to know that I'm involved now as your advocate or as one of your advocates, and I will stay involved and see this through. You know, I think of that as approach Memorial Day as one of the ways that we can honor the service of the women and men who have served.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I thought about several times over this last 2 months of the outbreak over there. Our visit, you and I going to visit there last Veterans Day weekend. The sad news is I know two, and I think there's a third gentleman that we sat with that day who have succumbed to COVID-19 while at the soldiers' home. So some of the gentlemen, the one gentleman that was quite talkative, he is fine. He is never got tested positive, so he's negative. He's doing all right. And I spoke with somebody who was chatting with him the other day. So that's the good news. But we did lose some of the men that were at the table with us that day. And you know, yeah, and just you being there and seeing these men, it's a unique experience at that place because they want to be there. They want to be with their peers. They want to be with the other veterans. They're still identifying it that at age 60, 70, 80 years old.
Yeah.
But they deserve better. And you've helped me in trying to bring that. You've only been in office for not that long of a time, and you've already done a lot. So I really thank you for that and for helping us.
Well, you know, Steve, you've been leading here. It's been easy to engage because you showed the way. You showed the way both in the ways that the state has to strengthen veteran services officers through positions that you've been holding, that, you know, clearly you are so well regarded across the Commonwealth, and clearly you show us the way this job should be done, and we should ask the state through your leadership to ensure that other veterans in other parts of the Commonwealth not served by the tireless Steve Connor get the kind of service that they need and deserve. And we have to set up those structures so that municipalities feel like they can continue to go to the mat for veterans in local communities and not let go of them because the state's made it too hard.
Yeah, I'm really glad here in Western Mass, we've got a good partnership with, through much of your district, I deal with the other VSOs. So we are doing a whole food distribution during this difficult time, trying to get all the resources and especially food to our veterans and their families. But yeah, so it's this Memorial Day is going to be quite different, but you know, whether it's virtual or in person, we really needed to make sure that we could mark it. And so I really appreciate your participation in this.
Oh my goodness, I appreciate you. And it's actually harder, I think, in COVID, knowing what we know about the Holyoke Soldiers' Home,
right?
To, you know, and the tragedy that's unfolding right now. It's harder to believe that we've done everything that we could to honor the women and men who have served the nation in our name, because we haven't there, as you've said to us for years. We haven't everything we could to serve those who serve. And again, some of whom paid that ultimate price of losing their lives in battle, some of whom came home to continue to serve in so many ways, and then sought some refuge at the Holyoke Soldiers' Home, and we were not able to provide it safely as a state. And it is hard to have that be with us. I know you know that better than I, Steve. It's hard to have that as part of context in which we'll mark Memorial Day this year.
Well, and we've all had a role. I mean, you've only been on for a little while in this role, but for many years, there's been representatives and senators who have assisted families to get people in to the soldiers' home, just like I have.
Right.
And it pains you to say, wow, we did that, and they didn't get all that they should have gotten. So for us here in Western Massachusetts, this is a wake-up call for us, I think, to work together to really make a difference. They deserve better than what they've been getting. So,
I agree.
yeah. Well, thank you. If you have any other last minute things you'd like to say, this will be airing on Memorial Day at 11 o'clock, I believe, through Northampton Television and YouTube. And I'm sure to send a link to everyone. But
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No, just I think that, you know, I can't say it better than you would say it, Steve. Women and men who have served our nation, we honor you and thank you for your service. And it's up to us now, those of us serving as veteran services officers, covering, I don't even know how many towns, Steve, those of us at state government, those of us at the federal level, it's up to us to serve you now. And that's what I signed up to do. And it's the greatest honor of my life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend.
I'd have to say one of my most memorable Memorial Days, and the one that has meant the most to me, and that I felt the most strong connection to, was the one that I saw you in the cemetery when we were replacing the flags in 2018. And it was the first time I'd ever done that, where I just showed up at a cemetery and said, I'm here, what can I do? And of course, you were there with several other volunteers that you were orchestrating, gave me great direction on what to do. And it was an incredibly powerful experience because it not only felt like I was caring for people in their resting place, but I got to know who those people were. So by reading their tombstones and understanding not only what their ages were when they died, but where they were veterans from, what wars they had served in, I felt like I was getting to know my community in a very different way. And then simultaneously, I met family members at the cemetery who were doing it for their loved ones and got to talk to them about their commitment around not only obviously remembering their family member, but caring for their family member in death, which just incredibly moving. And I told myself at that time, I'm going to try and do it as much as I can. And I think last year, I think I couldn't, I forget why. This year, pandemic, but next year I'm resuming because it was incredibly powerful. And I appreciate you so much for not only the fact that you do it every year, but that you also open it up. So there's a way for people like me and others who want to help to be able to do that. So thank you, Steve, very much.
And this year was a little challenging because we all had our masks on and everybody went about their business, but we did it and it's all been done. So,
well, keep me in mind next year, please, because it really was it's the best federal holiday I've had in a long time besides Election Day. But in terms of like what we're going to do in the future, I think that the incredible tragic events at the Soldiers' Home in Holyoke, coupled with what we're hearing about in the VA system across the country in terms of capacity to respond to people with military history and COVID-19, is making me sort of differently sensitive to the needs that we have to meet for older veterans. And as it is for older people in our community across the board, but particularly older veterans, and how we choose to deliver care to them or don't choose to deliver care, how much we prioritize it. Why does it take a disaster to get us to respond? I mean, I feel like if it wasn't for you, I'm not even sure how much longer the response would have been, to tell you the truth, Steve. I think you were definitely the clarion call to take care of our older veterans. And I'm looking forward in the coming months and years working with you around what that means on a more like community basis too. Like not just people who are in the Soldiers' Home, not just people who are going in and staying in the VA, but how do we take care of older veterans across the board? So I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Well, good. Yeah, it's going to be a challenging time because it's now the Vietnam veterans that are now at retirement age and getting older. And unfortunately, some of them have some real issues, health issues, because of the toxins that they were exposed to. But yeah, and of course the Soldiers Home is just sad. There's a community pain all around Western Massachusetts. Everyone I've talked to, you don't even have to know any of the gentlemen that passed. It just, you can feel it. It's a heavy heart.
And that, I think it's true. I think, most people in Western Mass don't know people. Well, that's not necessarily true. I think everybody in Western Mass, it's like a 6 degrees of separation to the Soldiers Home, right? We all sort of know someone or know someone who knows someone. But I think the pain involved in realizing it's more the pain around wanting to take care of our elderly, and then compounding it with what they've survived in order to protect our freedom, and then to not have us protect them. It's very powerful reminder about what we're supposed to be doing and what we maybe weren't doing.
I do know one Amherst veteran who did pass from it while he was there, and I had helped him get in there, him and his family, and that just kind of weighs heavy, but it is what happens, and it is what we do. So,
well, we're lucky to have you, Steve, in the region. We really are. Thank you so much for everything that you do. How are you going to be spending Memorial Day?
Well, there's little things that are traditions that we're going to do, but it can't be done with a crowd, and it can't be done with too much fanfare. But just so people know that the veterans in Amherst are going to be recognized to the best of our ability. So
thank you so much. And I appreciate being on this, but if there's something I could do specifically on Memorial Day to also support that, let me know.
All right. And you'll be able to watch us doing this and everything else we've put together on Monday, Memorial Day. So
that's great. Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to express these feelings and concerns and support and commitment for our region's veterans.
And thank you for all that you're doing. And I know you have to get on to another call. So very good. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I was in Vietnam, 1967 through 68, Tet Offensive of 68. I was assigned to the 1st Air Cavalry Division, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, and infantry. I walked point for 6 months, and then I did some headquarters company work after that. But about, let's say 10, maybe even 15 years ago, I received a couple of DVDs. I looked at the disc and he had a picture, and actually I was in the background, and it was from one of my squad members, Carl Osterich, and we called him 8-Track. Well, hence the recording. What I didn't know at the time when he was assigned to my squad was that his mother had sent him a little 8mm camera, and he was photographing live and doing still shots of all of us. I didn't know. I had no idea. And if you look at the DVD when it's under Fayette, that's where we were first stationed. You'll see members of my squad and the platoon. And a little further into the DVD, you'll actually see us in the helicopters flying to a mission. That's actual footage of us going into an LZ. There's footage of the city of Fayette overhead. You'll also see the narrow gauge French Railroad, and our LZs were right outside of that. It came as a complete shock to me. He sent me the DVDs, and then he asked me, do you have any more still pictures? Because he was putting together some more. So I sent him off some more. So we started in Fayette, moved north to Camp Evans, which was our base camp outside. We moved from Ankei to Camp Evans, went to Khe Sanh, and finished in the Oshaw Valley. So that's a little bit of history about the 1st Cav and the unit that I was assigned to. Good morning. My name is Tom Pease. I am the commander at VFW Post 8006 in Florence, Mass. Originally born and raised in Amherst on Southeast Street to my parents, Buster and Sophie Pease, and my grandparents lived on Southeast Street, the Peelis family, and I spent many years many summers at 47 East Pleasant Street in Amherst, so I'm quite familiar with the town. At this time, I'd like to speak about remembrance. Today, Memorial Day, is a day of remembrance where we all pause wherever we can now because we do have a virus and it's raised havoc with any of our ceremonies. But today still marks a remembrance of all those veterans that have gone before us, that served our country to provide us with the freedoms that we enjoy, our liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. Most recently, we should pay honor to those that lost their lives because of the virus at the Soldiers' Home. We lost dozens. Not only did they sacrifice for their country, but in the end, they succumbed to this terrible pandemic. I wish that everyone out there would take a moment today, and even days in the future, to remember them. But going back through history, we can go to the Civil War, all the way up to the Afghanistan events. Many soldiers, men and women, have lost their lives defending our country, providing us with the freedoms that we enjoy now. We may not think that we have freedom because we are having to, being forced to stay home and wear a mask, which I don't have, but they still fought for our freedoms. We are still the freest country in the world. We would not have the liberty that we have if it was not for those souls that have passed on. I want to think about the POWs that suffered sometimes 5, 6, 7 years and succumbed. I want to talk about missing in action. Missing in action. Those bodies were never returned. Those families will never, ever have complete closure about the ones that were missing in action. But these brave soldiers, these brave men and women, still sacrificed their lives on foreign soil to protect us, we, the people of the United States. I want us to always remember those sacrifices, the things that the families have gone through. If you can just imagine one soldier defending what he thought was right, leaves behind a mother, a father, probably sisters, brothers, cousins, aunts, and uncles. That one soldier's sacrifice affects so many of us. So today, we take the time, we should pause, reflect, remember those that have gone before us. It's a very difficult time to even enjoy a picnic, I am sure. But if you can find it in your heart to just spend a little bit of time and think about those that have gone before us, the sacrifices that they made, they will never, ever enjoy the freedoms that we have. We as a country should always stand strong. So today, as you enjoy or celebrate the beginning of summer, pause, raise a glass, toast to those that have gone before us. May they all rest in peace. God bless America. Thank you.
Here are the names of the veterans who have passed since we last gathered on Memorial Day 2019. David A. King III, James Q. Denton, Gerald W. Clark, Lawrence P. Kinder, Mark W. Smith, John T. Colin, Jeffrey D. Ferguson, Chester Penza, Lawrence Kinder, Richard Berquist, Raymond G. Girardin, Jr., Charles C. Harvey, William C. Venman, Stephen M. Volpe, Richard W. Sears, Leslie H. Brown, Patrick Fairhurst, Justin L. Cobb III, Dorothy Nestle, John P. Gedman, John F. Townsend, David J. Simpkins, James Q. Denton, George M. Wardlaw. May these veterans rest in peace. Thank you.